Everyone thought the old man's garage was nothing but rust and dust. But the day she lifted that top, the world she knew collapsed. The sky over Boulder, Colorado hung low and heavy, a sky that pressed on rooftops, on hearts, on silence itself. Cold rain slid down the gravestones like tears that refused to stop. A few people stood by the open grave, umbrellas trembling in the wind. Most weren't family, just neighbors, strangers who came out of politeness. But one person didn't move, didn't speak, didn't blink. Emily Harper, his granddaughter, the last one who still cared. She held a bouquet of chrysanthemums tight against her chest. White knuckles, frozen fingers. Her breath came out in mist. The casket was plain, rough wood, no shine, no flowers. Cheap, like everything left of his life. The pastor's voice rose and fell, hollow, rehearsed. Words that floated but never landed. Emily barely heard him. Her thoughts drifted back to the sound of her grandfather's laughter, that deep, warm rumble that used to fill her childhood like a song from another time. She remembered his hands, rough from tools, steady even in old age. The smell of oil and sawdust that clung to his clothes. The way he taught her to fall without fear, saying, "You can't learn balance without hitting the ground first." He was stubborn, yes. Strange, maybe. But he had a kind of quiet dignity no one else in her family ever understood. They called him the old fool. Said he wasted his life in that garage, fixing machines no one needed anymore. When he stopped answering their calls, they stopped caring. But Emily never did. Every weekend, she brought groceries, read to him when his voice grew weak. She was there when the cancer took his strength. She was there when he whispered, "Don't sell the house, not yet." Now she understood why he said it like a secret, like a warning. The pastor closed his book. The others shuffled away, muttering their condolences, empty words for an empty moment. Soon, the cemetery was quiet again. Only Emily remained. She knelt by the fresh mound of earth, placed a single leather glove on the coffin, cracked, worn, but familiar. His glove. The one that had shaped her childhood. "I'll take care of it," she whispered. The wind carried her promise away. By the time she reached his house, the rain had stopped, but the world still felt drenched in grey. The little home on the edge of town leaned with age, the porch sagging like tired shoulders. When she opened the door, a wave of stillness met her, the air thick with dust, oil, and memory. The clock in the corner still ticked. The chair by the window still held the imprint of his shape. On the wall, a photo of him as a young man, leather jacket, that same spark in his eyes. Emily brushed her fingers over the frame. She'd never seen that look before, wild, free, almost dangerous. The man in that photo wasn't the quiet mechanic she had buried today. She turned slowly, scanning the room. Every corner breathed of him. The old books, the road maps, the smell of gasoline in the floorboards. And then her eyes found it, through the window, behind the dying grass, a structure crouched in the fading light. The garage. The roof bent under years of neglect. The doors streaked with rust, sealed shut by time. She stared at it for a long moment. The memory surfaced, her as a child, asking to go inside, his soft refusal. "Not yet, Emmy. Some places aren't ready to be opened." Now she was the only one left with the key. And the question pressed on her chest like the storm still hanging in the sky. What did he hide in there? The last rain over Boulder had ended. But the story of her grandfather was only beginning. Morning broke thin and pale over Boulder. The storm had passed, but the air still smelled of rain and rust. Inside the old house, silence sat like dust, thick, unmoving, absolute. Emily woke on the couch, wrapped in her grandfather's faded blanket. Her dreams had been restless, flashes of metal, the echo of engines, a key turning in the dark. When she opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was the window, and beyond it, the garage. It waited like a shadow. She rose slowly. Every creak of the floorboards felt like a whisper from the past. The house was small, but alive with memory. Shelves of road maps, jars of nails, a clock that still ticked though no one had wound it in months. She brewed coffee in his old tin pot. It hissed, spat, filled the kitchen with the smell of burnt nostalgia. At the table lay his glasses, folded neatly beside a newspaper from months ago. The headline meant nothing. But the quiet weight of his absence, that meant everything. In the bedroom, she found the first secret. A trunk, pushed beneath the bed, covered in a film of grey dust. She dragged it into the light and opened it. Inside lay pieces of another life. Patches. Badges. A leather vest with a wolf's head embroidered on the back. Iron Wolves MC. Emily froze. Her heartbeat quickened. She'd never heard of them. Never seen that emblem before. Underneath the vest were photographs, black and white, curled at the edges. Men standing in front of rows of motorcycles, grinning under the sun. And there, in the middle, her grandfather. Younger. Wilder. Hair long, eyes burning with freedom. The man she buried 2 days ago had been a ghost of this one. He had lived 2 lives, and she had known only one. She held one of the photos up to the light. The sky behind him looked endless. The caption scribbled in pencil read, "Iron Wolves, 1968, never stop riding." Her phone buzzed. The sound shattered the spell. Uncle David. She hesitated, then answered. His voice came sharp, impatient. "So, did you clear out the house yet? Don't forget the garage. It's probably full of rats and junk. We'll sell the land next week." Emily's jaw clenched. She didn't answer right away. He continued, annoyed by her silence. "Seriously, Em. Don't get sentimental. It's all worthless." Click. She hung up. Her hand trembled with anger. Worthless. That word lingered like poison. He never understood her grandfather. None of them did. She turned back to the trunk, ran her fingers over the wolf's head, over the word iron, over the years that had been hidden away. Then her gaze drifted back toward the window, toward the garage. The evening light was fading again, laying long shadows across the yard. The doors loomed, dark and patient. They looked almost alive. She took the keys from the hook by the door. The ring was heavy, cold in her hand. She stepped outside. The grass crunched beneath her boots. Wind moved through the trees, whispering her name. The padlock hung from the door like a sentence waiting to be spoken. She slipped the key in, turned it once. The click echoed through the stillness. The hinges screamed when she pushed. A gust of air escaped, stale, thick with oil, time, and secrets. Inside, the darkness breathed. For a moment, she stood frozen, afraid of what she might find. Through the cracks in the roof, thin blades of light cut the air. They fell across massive shapes beneath dusty tarps, hulking outlines of machines, still and waiting. Emily took one step inside. Her heart pounded. The silence was alive, humming. She reached for the edge of the nearest top, then stopped. Her hand trembled. Not yet. She wasn't ready. The grief, the mystery, the weight of his absence, all of it pressed down too hard. She backed away, pulled the doors closed again. The sound thundered through the yard like the end of a chapter. She turned toward the house. The last light of the day caught the dust still swirling in the air behind her. Something was in there. Something he had protected. From them, from time, from the world. She looked down at the key in her hand. It gleamed faintly in the dying sun. And she knew, deep in her chest, tomorrow, she would open it all. Dawn came quietly. The kind of quiet that hums before a revelation. The air over Boulder was cold and silver. Mist curled above the grass like smoke rising from the earth itself. And in that pale light, the garage waited, silent, heavy, watching her. Emily stood at the back door of the house, a mug of untouched coffee cooling in her hands. She hadn't slept. Her mind kept circling back to the shapes under those tarps. To the emblem, Iron Wolves MC. To her grandfather's eyes in those photographs, alive in ways she'd never seen. She set the mug down, slipped the ring of keys into her pocket. Her heartbeat matched her footsteps as she crossed the yard. The padlock yielded this time without resistance, almost as if the door itself had been waiting for her. When she pulled the doors open, a breath of stale air spilled out, thick with dust, oil, leather, and time. The light filtered through cracks in the roof, cutting the gloom into golden shards. For a moment, she simply stood there. Then she stepped inside. Her boots clicked against the concrete floor. Each sound echoed, distant, hollow. The air vibrated faintly, not with sound, but with memory. She reached the first top. The fabric was stiff, rough under her fingers. She took a breath, and pulled. Dust exploded into the light. And there it was, a Harley-Davidson knucklehead, 1947. The black paint had dulled, but the shape, the sheer power of its form, still glowed beneath the years. Thick tires, curved steel, a seat worn smooth from miles no one remembered. Her breath caught. Her hand rose, hesitant, then rested on the cold metal of the tank. It was like touching a sleeping animal. Something ancient and alive beneath the stillness. She circled it slowly. The smell of old oil filled her lungs. Her fingertips traced the lines her grandfather must have polished again and again. The way one touches something sacred. She whispered, almost to herself, "You kept them." One by one, she uncovered the others. An Indian chief, 1953, faded red paint still clinging to the sweeping fenders. A Vincent black shadow, black as sin, once called the fastest in the world. Its chrome caught the morning light and threw it back like a blade. Then an Indian Scout, nearly a century old, its frame elegant, compact, proud. And in the far corner, custom builds. Long, stretched frames. Chrome engraved with wolves. Gas tanks painted with fire and sky. She recognized the symbol now, the snarling wolf's head. Iron Wolves MC. His brotherhood. His other life. At the workbench, she found stacks of photographs. Her grandfather with men in leather jackets, hands raised in laughter, sun in their faces. Highways stretching into nowhere. Desert dust. Freedom. In one photo, he stood beside his bike, hair flying in the wind, a grin wild and unrestrained. On the back of the picture, his handwriting. Ride forever. Emily's chest tightened. She felt tears rise but didn't let them fall. For the first time, she saw him as he truly was, not the quiet old man with trembling hands, but a legend of motion, of road, of fire. The air inside the garage grew still again. Only her breathing filled the space. The motorcycles stood before her like monuments. Silent, majestic, waiting. She turned slowly, her fingers brushing the handlebars of the nearest one. It was like holding a heartbeat, one that had paused but never died. She looked up, toward the cracked roof, where the light streamed down like blessings. And in that moment, she understood. He hadn't built this place to store junk. He had built a sanctuary, a cathedral of engines and freedom. Emily smiled through her tears. Her whisper broke the silence. You weren't fixing machines, Grandpa. You were keeping them alive. The wind shifted outside. Somewhere, faintly, a dog barked. A crow cried out. The world moved again. And for the first time since his death, Emily felt something stir inside her, not grief, but purpose. Tomorrow, she would start cleaning, restoring, remembering. The Iron Wolves hadn't died. They had only gone quiet. And now, their story, and his, would breathe again. The next morning came sharp and bright, sunlight spilling across the yard like truth that refused to stay buried. Emily stood at the kitchen window, staring at the garage. Yesterday it had been a tomb. Today, it felt like a heart, old, but still beating. She tied her hair back, rolled up her sleeves, and walked outside. Inside, the air was warmer now. Golden light poured through the cracks in the roof, dancing on the chrome and dust. She moved between the bikes, her fingertips gliding across the tanks. Each touch whispered his name. Each gleam of metal felt like a pulse beneath her skin. She began to clean. One rag. One corner. One memory at a time. Hours passed in silence, broken only by the soft scrape of cloth against steel. The Harley's tank began to shine again. The Indian's feathers regained their faint red glow. Even the old Vincent reflected her face, tired, streaked with dust, but alive. Then came the sound she dreaded, tires crunching on gravel. A car door slammed. Voices. Emily. Her uncle's voice, sharp and impatient. And behind him, her Aunt Martha, carrying that same expression she'd worn at the funeral, pity wrapped in irritation. Emily stepped out of the garage, wiping her hands on her jeans. Sunlight burned in her eyes. "What are you doing here?" she asked. David crossed his arms, scanning the property. "You haven't answered my calls. Thought I'd check if you were still wasting your time." He nodded toward the open doors behind her. "So this is it, huh? The great mystery? Junk and rust." Martha laughed softly, shaking her head. "Oh, Em. You're sentimental. That's your problem. This place is falling apart. Just sell it before it collapses." Emily felt her jaw tighten. Her voice came low, steady. It's not junk. It's history. David snorted. History doesn't pay bills. She stepped closer, her face calm but her hands trembling. You didn't know him. None of you did. He turned away, muttering something about old fools and bad investments. Martha added, We are calling an appraiser. You'll thank us when you see the check. No, Emily said. Her voice cut through the air like glass. You won't touch a single bolt. They stared at her, surprised by the steel in her tone. David smirked. And what? You'll stop us? You think you can keep this museum of ghosts alive all by yourself? Emily didn't flinch. She held his gaze, calm and defiant. I don't think. I know. For a moment, no one spoke. Only the wind moved, stirring the dust around their feet. Finally, David laughed, short and cold. Fine. Waste your life, then. Just don't come crying when the bank takes the house. They left with slamming doors and spinning tires. The echo lingered long after they were gone. Inside the garage, Emily leaned against the Harley seat. Her hand shook. Tears burned at the corners of her eyes. Anger, grief, defiance all tangled into one. She whispered, They'll never understand you, Grandpa. Her voice cracked, but her resolve hardened. If he had spent his life building the sanctuary, then she would spend hers protecting it. That evening, she drove into town. Stopped in front of a small repair shop with a faded sign, Carl's Custom Motors. The man behind the counter looked up, wiping grease from his hands. Broad shoulders. Grey hair. Recognition flickered in his eyes. You're Jack Harper's granddaughter, aren't you? Emily nodded. I need help bringing his bikes back to life. Carl smiled, slow and knowing. I wondered when someone would ask. 2 days later, the garage roared again. Engines coughed, sputtered, then growled, one after another. Carl's crew worked beside her, their hands black with oil, their voices low with reverence. And when the first Harley finally came alive, that deep, thunderous rumble filling the air, Emily felt her heart stutter. Tears blurred her vision. It wasn't just a sound. It was a heartbeat returning to the world. Carl looked at her and nodded. He'd be proud, kid. Real proud. Emily smiled through the tears. In the glow of that moment, surrounded by fire and steel, she whispered, Then let's keep going. Let's bring them all back. Outside, the sun dipped low, staining the sky in copper and flame. The garage doors stayed open long into the night. From the road, passing drivers slowed, hearing the thunder of engines reborn. The legend of Jack Harper was waking up. Episode 5, The Roar That Became a Prayer. Almost equals 600 words, cinematic finale, emotional crescendo, visual and auditory intensity. The morning of the opening came quietly, too quietly. The sky over Boulder hung pale and silver, a calm before a storm that wasn't weather. Emily hadn't slept. The whole night she'd replayed the sound of that Harley's engine in her head, the growl, the heartbeat, the promise. Now the garage stood behind her, transformed. Clean. Restored. Alive. The machines gleamed beneath the soft light filtering through the roof. Every bolt polished. Every seat repaired. Every engine reborn. Photographs covered the walls, black and white faces smiling through decades of dust. The iron wolves had come back to life, one image at a time. On the far wall hung a single sign she had painted by hand. Jack Harper rides forever. By noon, she began to doubt. Maybe no one would come. Maybe all those calls, those emails, those promises from old riders were just nostalgia fading in the wind. The silence outside pressed against her ribs like a slow ache. She stepped out into the yard. The road stretched quiet and empty under the sun. A hawk circled above. Even the air held its breath. And then, a sound. Low. Distant. Like thunder rolling across the plains. She froze. Head tilted. Another rumble followed. Then another. Engines. They came from beyond the hills, first a handful, then dozens, then hundreds. Chrome flashed in the sunlight like blades of lightning. The sound swelled until it shook the ground beneath her feet. Rows upon rows of motorcycles rolled toward the old house. Black leather, denim, bandanas, patches gleaming in the wind. Engines howling like a pack of wolves returning home. Emily's eyes filled with tears. She pressed her hands to her mouth, overwhelmed. The first riders turned into the yard, shutting off their engines one by one, the rumble fading into stunned silence. And then someone said softly, "Harper's Place." They began to dismount. Men and women of every age, some grey-haired and scarred, some young and wide-eyed, removing helmets, wiping dust from their faces. Their jackets bore the mark of iron wolves, cracked and faded but proud. Carl stood near the door, arms crossed, a quiet smile on his face. "Told you," he said. They never forgot him. Emily stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Thank you for coming." No one spoke. They just looked at her, the granddaughter of the man they called brother. She turned toward the garage and pulled open the doors. Light flooded the room. Gasoline, leather, chrome, dust, a living altar of steel and history. The crowd grew still. Some took off their gloves. Others bowed their heads. One by one, the riders entered, touching the bikes as they passed. The Harley knucklehead, the Indian chief, the Vincent Black Shadow. Each machine a relic of stories they thought lost forever. Tears glimmered in rough faces. A woman whispered, "He built these with his."